I know, this isn't what I usually do on this channel, so if you're new here and just stumbled upon this corner of YouTube due to this video, then hello. My name is Maine, or better known as Silent Talent. I make and post videos about the Ben 10 universe every week, but this week I've decided to slightly deviate from the topic just a bit to talk about Spider-Man. Specifically, Marvel Spider-Man, which is a television show on Disney XD. What does the XD stand for? They just thought it looked cool. Marvel Spider-Man is, again, a television series that first aired on Disney XD in 2017 and was the successor to Ultimate Spider-Man, with the intent to introduce the character to a new generation of young comic readers. This Spider-Man actually first appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy series before his initial debut in his own show. Voiced by Robbie Daymond, who also voices Prompto in Final Fantasy 15, my favorite game ever. This series follows Peter Parker, who is admitted in Horizon High, an academy for young geniuses who study at the best of their ability to make the world a better place through technology. Including myself, the show has its fans, and although at first I had my doubts about this new series, it's grown on me since. First things first, this is a kids show targeted at kids, so there's going to be some scenes or dialogue where you question why characters did this instead of that. Sometimes characters have to do stupid things in order for the plot to continue, especially when it comes to the superhero genre. So you read the title. What do I like about the show? In all honesty, it took me a few episodes to fully get into it. Peter Parker, we all know his story, and how he became Spider-Man, but when it comes to these different series, besides the fun villains and action, I like to examine just how this version of the hero differs to others that came before. Peter Parker, Earth 17628. Why I like him, besides the fact that his voice actor plays a character in my favorite video game. This Peter Parker is a sort of back to basics in comparison to Ultimate Spider-Man. This version, well, to put it simply, he's Peter Parker. He's a young Peter Parker trying to make his way through the world and balance his hero life with his normal life. That's the same template we get for almost every Peter Parker story. This one is no different. What makes a good Spider-Man story, or any story for that matter, is the world the hero belongs to and how they interact with said world, along with the experience they make and how they change along the way. We already know who he is, and in each story his personality may be different, but the base is always still there. My favorite moments of where they capture the essence of blending Peter Parker and Spider-Man together is the four-parter Bring On the Bad Guys. In these episodes, Peter has been getting zero sleep due to someone putting a hit out on Spider-Man, causing him to constantly be on the run and fighting villains basically 24/7. Peter hadn't even gotten time to start on his science project and is desperately trying to get the supplies he needs while dealing with the fatigue and pain that comes with being hunted down by multiple villains back to back. Like most Peter Parkers in Spider-Verse, he's smart. So smart that he's attending Horizon High, which in my mind just makes sense, but I'll get to that later on in the video. One of my favorite episodes is My Own Worst Enemy, which is the 15th episode of Season 2. First off, regardless of how you feel about the show, you have to give the creators and the team behind the scenes credit to do the superior Spider-Man run. I was surprised they even went that route. While watching the episode The Living Brain, I found myself both interested and nervous because I wanted them to take the leap, but since I assumed they most likely wouldn't do a storyline that saw Doc Ock switch minds with Peter Parker, but I was wrong, and by the end of it, I wanted to see more. I had to see where they took the story from there. The episode starts with a recap of the episode The Living Brain, with Otto switching bodies with Peter, albeit with a bit more to the scene. Before, we only saw the transfer before the scene cut to Spider-Man defeating the Living Brain, perching on top of an antenna tower, and being revealed that Peter's body was taken over by Doc Ock. This time around, there is more context. We see the body transfer, and then Otto Spider-Man beat and destroy the living brain with Peter inside, which I really kind of appreciated. I mean, the dark tone in this episode is pretty surprising, and I really got the feel that this saga will be a lot more different than the episodes we'd had prior. The creators behind the show are now planning out and understand what they wanted to do going forward. A lot of the first 30 episodes with Dr. Octopus being the main focus majority of the time had a lot of randomly placed events in them, especially when it came to the episode How I Quit My Summer Vacation. I noticed they've been getting better with the pacing, small arcs between the main plot and other episodes. Them announcing the Superior Spider-Man arc as a saga instead of naming it Superior Spider-Man Part 1 to 6 told me they could be going in another direction. Usually in animation, when you have a body swap, you either get the voice from another actor as their respective character coming from the opposite body, or the characters whose body got swapped reading their counterparts' lines. In this case, it's Robbie Daymond doing his best impression of Scott Manville's Otto Octavius, with Scott being the voice in his head whenever he's thinking, which makes a lot of sense. People talk differently from the tone of their voice, and even their inner monologue has a separate voice of its own. Otto's plans are basically to get back at the people in the city for wronging him, and to do so, he needs to raid a weapons cache from AIM, which leads to a fight where he officially uses his spider powers for the first time. Superior learning how to understand his powers and realizing Peter wasn't using his full potential was something pulled from the comics that I really enjoyed. Realizing that his enemy that he's been fighting for years could just punch his jaw off if he really wanted to was something from the comics I think an eye-opener to everyone from the character to the reader. This realization in my eyes was dark, but that wasn't the only thing because this episode is surprisingly dark. I mean, after the body switch, when Ock is basically killing Peter who's inside the living brain, while eerie music plays during the background of the scene, is quite appalling. I mean, in the previous episode, we basically see the death of Spider-Man. A fight with AIM causes a car to go off the side of a bridge, making what I like to call Ock's Peter sense to tingle. Peter tingle?
Please do not start calling it my Peter tingle.
It's basically the responsibility of Peter reaching out through Otto, drawing out the natural instinct of a hero, giving him the want to save a family from a car crash. A car crash that gave me the Amazing Spider-Man vibes. That leads to Ock's episodes where he begins to understand more about Peter Parker and why he does what he does. Otto admitting that he hadn't allowed himself to cry in years was just a wow moment for me. This show is very colorful and can be a bit over the top sometimes, but this moment where he's experiencing these memories from Peter's point of view and begins feeling his emotions is intense. I liked how Otto didn't just switch to being a villain because he was in Spider-Man's body, and that it was a process. It was Peter's memories of overcoming his own desires to get revenge that made the two relate in a way, and have Otto realizing what he'd been doing. Yet another dark element in this episode was the Central Park explosion. During the last few moments after understanding what it means to be a hero, there's a moment I like to call Boy Ball Bomb. Or at least that's what I put in my notes. The scene where Otto is rushing towards Central Park to whip up these explosives so they don't blow a hole in the city was intriguing and made me realize the slight shift in tone. During the fight, it was interesting to see him gradually turn on Silver Sable, as gradually as a villain turning into a hero can be in the span of 22 minutes, of course. Superior learning about the responsibility of his own powers of the episode was interesting as well. Like I said before, his Peter tingle would kick in and his will to be a hero overcame his desire to be a villain. Hammerhead goes to jail when Superior goes to pick up Silver Sable and appears at the end thinking Spider-Man wasn't going to come after him. But of course, that ended up not being the case, which is when we get the reveal of the first on-screen appearance of Superior Spider-Man. Before you knew or at least had an idea of where the story was going to go, like, he gets the black suit, there's Venom. Here's a goblin. Oh look, Miles got bit. Now that they're past all that, they can get into the new storylines and go places where a Spider-Man show hasn't gone before. I believe they can do what Ultimate Spider-Man tried. My only complaint with Ultimate Spider-Man was that, from what I remember, every episode seemingly became a Spider-Team episode, but with this, they're making Miles, Gwen, and Anya more of their own characters that even star in their own episodes at times, like in A Day Without Spider-Man. The episode takes place sometime after Otto switches bodies with Peter. Spider-Man is missing. Miles, Gwen, and Anya, who have to go up against the Tinkerer and Scorpion, are wondering about his whereabouts. Of course, us being the audience, we have an idea of where he is. To give a quick summary, after Scorpion steals the blood gem from Horizon High, Gwen goes after him to get it back, to prove to Anya and Miles that she doesn't need powers in order to be helpful. The gem reactivates Gwen's spider powers, and the three then team up to defeat the two villains, who have now used the gem to enhance themselves. During the last fight, they're trying their best to desperately survive the attack from Scorpion and the Tinkerer, which involves them proving to the villains that they're just as capable as the original Spider-Man, who still hasn't shown up, regardless of the villains trying their best to get his attention. He doesn't show up at all in this episode, not even for a little appearance before the credits. It's all about Gwen, Anya, and Miles proving to the villains and the city that they're their own heroes. This episode also does a good job of differentiating the different heroes. They're not just spin-offs of Spider-Man, they're their own characters. Miles is using what Peter taught him about banter and fighting and adopting those lessons into his own skill set, while Anya is very protective, believing in making plans before they attack and seeing playful quips as useless. Gwen, on the other hand, being almost carefree, seeing her powers as a gift more than the others do. When the series first began, it seemed to be slightly more episodic, with hints of a bigger storyline playing out in the background every other episode. But the show has evolved since then in my eyes, even planting seeds for future arcs, like in Web of Venom, where Max Modell, who has discovered Peter's secret, believing that the world deserves to know he's Spider-Man, which is portrayed as a small little discussion in the episode, and yet 3 episodes later, we're getting Spider-Man unmasked. This show also does a good job at reintroducing old Spider-Man villains with a new twist, and introducing new characters you may not have heard of. I don't know, when it comes to entertainment, I found myself enjoying things a majority of people seem to not enjoy. I like Man of Steel and Thor the Dark World. Iron Man 3 is a guilty pleasure of mine. And besides what all the countless video essays on YouTube say, I love the Amazing Spider-Man films. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was meant for my generation. No, Sam Raimi didn't get to make Spider-Man 4, and that's pretty sad, but there's nothing anyone can do about it. You can't change what's already happened, and yet there are still people out there who can't let go of situations like this and complain about new content, i.e., calling Tom Holland's Spider-Man Iron Man Jr., or for the purposes of this video, bash Marvel's Spider-Man. The problem I have with fans like this is that they seem to always have a specific thing and believe that thing defines the character of Spider-Man. They understand the concepts of alternate universes and branching timelines and can get behind an explanation of the multiverse, but if there's something that they don't like, they immediately are willing to disown it from the property it derives from. Just because something is different and you don't like it, doesn't mean it's your responsibility to go against it and look down upon those who do like it. The main plot of Spider-Verse was that anyone could wear the mask. What I mostly see people complaining about is that whenever Peter is explaining something about science, it's annoying, or if they can't think of anything clever, they'll talk about the animation or character designs, which are actually really good. I mean, I don't see you making a TV show for Disney. But the number one statement I notice a lot is that how Peter isn't poor. Being poor isn't a character trait. If anything, it just sucks. Also, Peter Parker is one of the most smartest minds on the planet, so why not have him attending Horizon High? I don't want a copy and paste of the same story from the original comics or any other story that came after. There's question of why isn't Peter like this, or why is Miles smart? Alternate universe. Also, I cannot stress this enough, No matter how many petitions you make, Spectacular Spider-Man is never coming back. Short answer, legal reasons. Long answer, when Disney bought the rights to Marvel, they obtained the television rights to the Spider-Man character, meaning they could produce any animated television series of the character, while Sony kept the movie rights, while still keeping ownership of Spectacular Spider-Man. And Disney was able to create new shows, but not allowed to continue anything that came before their deal, including Spectacular Spider-Man. I understand that this isn't your thing, but understand that this is a kids show. And I get that shows mostly targeted towards kids can have serious issues or themes in them, but each network is different and each producer is different. Some fans just don't get that there are living, breathing people behind these works of art and entertainment. I said this before in my video where I discuss why the Omniverse era of Ben 10 is my favorite, and I talk about how the reboot net is actually worth watching. If it's not your thing, then just don't watch it, instead of wasting your time just to badmouth something you have no interest in. Side note, I couldn't find the post for the life of me, but Kelly Turnbull is a storyboard artist for the Ben 10 reboot. I don't know how recent it was, but she had a motorcycle accident and someone had tweeted or posted at her stating that she should have died because she worked on this new generation of Ben 10. With both the Ben 10 reboot and Marvel Spider-Man, I see a lot of people who haven't seen a full episode of the show post a random out-of-context clip online from one of the earlier episodes before the show had a chance to get its footing and talk about how it isn't their version of the said character. I'm gonna say this one more time. Alternate universes! None of this erases anything that's come before. You still have 80 plus years of Spider-Man to fall back on, so just go read or watch that and let this generation experience their Spider-Man. Why acknowledge something that you don't want to be a part of? If this video potentially changed your view on things, I'll have a list of my favorite episodes on the screen for you to check them out. These days, there's a lot of this generation versus that generation, and on the internet there are a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, who think it's their obligation to point at things and bash them and let others know that they hate it, regardless of the thousands of other comments stating that same exact thing. But, and I'm sure you heard this before, it's completely okay to have an opinion, but it's not okay to hurt someone in the process of stating that opinion. If it was, we'd be no better than the villains our favorite heroes fight against. What I'm trying to get with this whole video is that there should be an equal amount of love for a show, as much as there is hate. Don't get me wrong, I've seen others defend this show and I don't expect all the viewers of the series to rise up and state how much they love it. All I'm saying is the internet is a very useful tool, but it's also a very great power. And with great power
comes
Don't
great...
you dare finish that sentence. Don't do it. I'm sick of it.
Be great everybody, and I'll see you when I see you.